Previously, on the Adventures of Pinocchio, written by Carlo Collodi and read by M.V.P.Knight. I'm about to do Pinocchio's voice. As is common knowledge, Pinocchio is an Italian story, so for the man himself, I shall do an authentic Italiano accent. It's me, Pinocchio. Do not strike me so hard. Did I just read that the woodcutter rose onto his knees, saying that he was prompt to serve the queer woodcutter? Dang, this book was ahead of its time. Disclaimer, M.V.P.Knight is using this voice for the sake of comedy and does not mean actual offense. Why do you offend me? Oh no, you didn't. Who has offended you? You have called me, like, cornmeal? I did not. I say you did. No. Yes. No. Yes! Hearing himself called cornmeal for the third time, Geppetto lost control of himself. He approached the woodcutter and gave him a blow. Did I just read that the queer woodcutter gave him a blow? Then Geppetto took him by the neck, and while he led him back, said, shaking him, "Wait until we get home, and I will give you a whipping." Pinocchio, at this threat, called Child Protective Services. No, I'm kidding. I released the video with the first 3 chapters quite some time ago. That video got a demotivating lack of views, which was disappointing because I always have such fun making these audiobook videos. This morning I woke up and felt kind of bleh, and I mulled over what video to do today. I couldn't do such and such video because reasons. I couldn't do this video because the whatchamacallit's not working. So I thought, you know what? I am going to record an audiobook because that's what my emotions need right now. I will worry about the lack of views later. I will tell you, children, that while poor old Geppetto was led to prison without having done any wrong, I think that might be a case of unreliable narrator. I remember him at least threatening to do something wrong. That rogue Pinocchio, being free, took to his heels and ran towards the fields, in order more easily to reach his house. In his haste, he jumped high mounds of earth, hedges of thorns, and ditches of water, just as rabbits and deer do when chased by hunters. When he arrived before the house, he found the door to the street half shut. He pushed it open, entered the room, and bolted the door. Then he threw himself down on the floor and heaved a great big sigh of happiness. But happiness did not last very long, because he heard someone crying in the room, "Cree, cree, cree." "Who is speaking to me?" said Pinocchio, frightened. "It is I." Pinocchio turned around and saw a large cricket that walked slowly up on the wall. "Tell me, cricket, who are you?" "I am the talking cricket, and I have lived in this room for more than 100 years. Today, however, this room is mine," said the marionette, "and if you wish to do me a favor, go away immediately, without even turning yourself around once." "I will not go away from here," said the cricket, "without telling you a great truth." "Tell it to me and be gone." "Woe to boys who rebel against their parents and foolishly run away from their homes. They will never get along well in the world, and sooner or later will bitterly repent of their actions." "Sing on, little cricket, if it pleases you. But I know that tomorrow, at the dawn of day, I shall go away, because if I remain here, what happens to all the other boys will happen to me, and I shall have to go to school and be made to study. And I will tell you in confidence that I have no wish to study at all, and I propose to play and run after butterflies, and climb trees, and take the little birds out of their nests." "Poor little stupid thing! Do you not know that in doing so, you will become a donkey, and that everybody will make fun of you?" "Calm yourself, bad cricket of ill omen," cried Pinocchio. But the cricket, who was a patient philosopher, instead of becoming angry at the impatience, continued in the same tone of voice, "And if it does not please you to go to school, why not at least learn a trade, so as to be able to earn honestly a piece of bread? Do wish me to tell you?" replied Pinocchio, who began to lose patience. "Because among the trades of the world, there is only one that suits my genius." He was carved out within 24 hours, if I'm not mistaken, and he's already talking about the trades of the world. "And what trade may that be?" "That of eating, drinking, sleeping, and amusing myself, and of living from morning to night an easy life." "Those who live that way," said the talking cricket with his usual calmness, "always end in the hospital or in prison. Take care, bad cricket of ill omen. If you make me angry, I pity you." "Poor Pinocchio, you make me pity you." "Why do I make you pity me?" "Because you are a marionette, and what is worse, you have a wooden head." At these words, Pinocchio jumped up enraged, and taking a hammer from a bench, flung it at the talking cricket. Perhaps he did not believe himself capable of doing such a thing, but unfortunately the hammer struck the cricket in the head so suddenly that he had only the breath to say, "Cree, cree, cree," and then remained stuck fast to the wall. Chapter 5. Meanwhile the night came on, and Pinocchio, remembering that he had eaten nothing, felt a gnawing in his stomach that strongly resembled an appetite. But the appetite of boys increases very quickly, and so after a few minutes, the appetite became hunger, and the hunger finally became like a wolf. Poor Pinocchio ran suddenly to the fireplace, where there was a pot of boiling water, into which he tried to look, but he found that it was only a painting. Imagine his surprise! His nose, which was already long, began to grow longer, nearly equal to 4 fingers. Then he ran around the room and rummaged through all the drawers and boxes and all the hiding places in search of a piece of bread. Only a piece of dried bread, a crust, a bone for a dog, little mush, a fish bone, a kernel of a cherry. In fact, anything at all to eat. But he found absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, his hunger constantly increased. Poor Pinocchio had no other relief than that of yawning, and he made such wide gaps that the corners of his mouth touched his ears. After having yawned, he felt as if his stomach would go away. Then, weeping in despair, he said, "The talking cricket was right. I have behaved badly in turning my back on my papa and running away. If my papa were only here now, I should not find myself dying of yawns. Oh, what the horrible sickness hunger is!" Suddenly it appeared to him that he saw something at the top of a rubbish heap that very much resembled a hen's egg. It required but a second to jump to the spot, and there he really saw a nice big egg. It is impossible to describe the joy of the marionette. It is necessary to be a marionette in order to understand it. Fearing that it might be a dream, he turned the egg round in his hand, and touched it, and kissed it, and kissing it, said, "And now, how ought I to cook it? Shall I make an omelette? No, it is better to poach it. Or would it not be more savory to scramble it? Or instead of cooking it, I might drink it raw. No, the nicest way is to cook it in a saucepan." No sooner said than done. He placed the saucepan above a heap of burning shavings. In the saucepan, instead of oil or butter, he put a little water. When the water began to smoke, tack, he broke the shell of the egg and held it over the steaming saucepan. He was in the act of pouring out the egg when instead of the yolk, there appeared a little chicken, very little and polite. It made a beautiful bow and said, "Many thanks, Mr. Pinocchio, for saving me the trouble of breaking my shell. Goodbye, be good, and give my respects to the family." Saying this, the little chicken spread its wings and flew out the open window and away so quickly that it was soon out of sight. The poor marionette remained there stupefied, with his eyes fixed, with his mouth open, and with the eggshell in his hands. He soon came to himself, however, and began to weep, to scream, and to stamp his feet on the ground in desperation. And while weeping, he said, Oh yes, the talking cricket was right. If I had not run away, and if my papa were only here, I should not find myself dying of hunger. Ah, what the horrible sickness hunger is. And because his stomach still grumbled more than ever, and because he did not know what else to do, he thought he would go out and run to the little neighboring town in the hope of finding some charitable person who would find him and give him a piece of bread. Chapter 6. It was a horrible night. It thundered very heavily, and it lightened as if the heavens would take fire, while an ugly wind whistled savagely and raised an immense cloud of dust. Pinocchio was afraid of thunder and lightning, but his hunger was greater than his fear. In a few hundred jumps, he arrived at the edge of the town, out of breath, with his tongue hanging out on his chin, just like a hunting dog. But he found the town all dark and deserted. The stores were closed. The doors of the houses were shut, and the windows were bolted. There was not even a dog in the streets. It appeared as if the town were dead. Then Pinocchio despairingly pulled the doorbell of one of the houses, and rang it with all his might, saying to himself, "Someone will come." Soon a cross old man with a nightcap on his head looked out of a window and cried, "What do you want at this hour?" "Will you give me a little bread?" "Wait there, and I will return immediately," replied the old man, believing that he had to deal with some of the bad boys who go around at night worrying people with ringing their bells. After half a minute the window opened again, and the same old man said to Pinocchio, "Come under the window and hold your hat." Pinocchio, who had not yet a hat, approached and was nearly drowned by a great deluge of water that the old man poured down on him from a large bucket. He returned home like a drowned rat, weak from hunger and tired out, and because he had not enough strength to stand upright, he fell into a chair and rested his feet on the stove that was filled with burning shavings, and fell asleep. But while he slept, his feet, which were of wood, took fire and slowly became cinders. But Pinocchio snored away just as if his feet belonged to someone else. He was awakened the next morning by someone who had knocked at the door. "Who is it?" he asked, yawning and rubbing his eyes. "It is I," replied a voice. That was the voice of Geppetto. Chapter 7. Poor Pinocchio, who was not quite awake, did not notice that his feet had burned off. He gave a start and jumped down from his chair so as to run and open the door. Instead, after staggering 2 or 3 times, he fell flat on the floor. And in falling, he made the same noise that a stack of wood would make in falling from the 5th story of a house. "Open the door!" cried Geppetto from the street. "I cannot, father," responded the marionette, weeping and turning over and over on the floor. "Why?" "Because someone has eaten my feet." "And who has eaten them?" "The cat," said Pinocchio, seeing the cat with its 2 front paws playing with a bit of wood. "Open the door, I say," repeated Geppetto. "If not, when I come into the house, I shall whip you." "I cannot stand up, believe me." "Oh, poor me. I shall be obliged to walk on my knees all my life." Geppetto, believing that all the weeping was simply a trick to deceive him, thought he would make an end of it. So he climbed up the side of the house and entered through the window. At first he was very angry, but when he saw Pinocchio really stretched out on the floor without any feet, he felt sorry and took him gently by the neck and began to caress him. Swallowing a big sob, he said, "You dear little Pinocchio, how is it that you have burned off your feet?" "I do not know, Papa, but believe me, the night has been a horrible one, and I shall remember it always. It's thundered and lightened, and I was so very hungry, and the talking cricket said to me, 'It deserves you right. You have been wicked, and you deserve it all.' I said to him, 'Take care, cricket.' And he said to me, 'You are a marionette, and have a wooden head.' I then took a hammer and threw it at him, and it killed him. Then I placed a saucepan on some burning shavings to cook an egg, But when I broke the egg, a little chicken flew out of the shell and said, "Goodbye, little one." Meanwhile, I grew more hungry, and I ran to the house and rang the doorbell for help. An old man with his nightcap on came to the window and emptied the bucket of water all over me. Was that a nice way to treat the boy? A proper way to treat a girl, perhaps, but not a boy. I'm kidding. I came home right away and dropped into the chair and placed my feet on the stove. Now you have come back and found me with my feet all gone, and I am still awfully hungry. Hi. And poor Pinocchio began to cry and bellow so loudly that he could be heard for miles. Geppetto, who, through all the sad story, thought of only one thing, and that was that the marionette was dying of hunger, suddenly pulled out of his pockets 3 pears, and handing them to the marionette, said, "These 3 pears were to have been my breakfast, but I give them to you willingly. Eat them, and may they do you good. If you want me to eat them, be so kind as to peel them." "Peel them?" replied Geppetto, greatly surprised. "I would never have believed that you would be so hard to please. Bad boy. In this world, little boys must eat what is given to them." "That is all right," said Pinocchio, "but I never eat fruit unless it is peeled. I cannot eat the skins." This thing has been starving all night and now it's finicky about skins on fruit. In that good man Geppetto took out his pockets a small knife and with much patience peeled the 3 pears and placed all the skins on the corner of the table. After Pinocchio had eaten the first pear in 2 mouthfuls, he was in the act of throwing away the core when Geppetto took him by the arm and said to him, "Do not throw the core away. Everything in the world has its use." "But I never eat the core," cried the marionette, wriggling like a snake. "All right," said Geppetto without getting angry. The result was that the 3 cores, instead of being thrown away, were placed on the corner of the table with the skins. Having eaten, or to describe it more truly, having devoured, the 3 pears, Pinocchio began a long yawn and said, "I am still hungry." "But my boy, I have nothing more to give you." "Nothing more? Truly?" "Nothing, except those skins and cores." "Oh well," said Pinocchio, "if there's nothing more, I will eat the skins." And he commenced to eat them. At first he puckered his mouth, but one after another the skins disappeared. After the skins he ate the cores also. When he had eaten everything, he clapped his hands contentedly on his little stomach and said, "Now I feel better." "You see now," said Geppetto, "that I was right when I told you that you must accustom yourself to what is given you, and not be too dainty. My dear boy, no one ever knows what may happen in this world, so always be prepared for the worst." I honestly don't know if I'm going to continue this. I did have some fun recording this, but it might not get that much attention, so I make no promises about it. If you liked this, definitely check out my audiobooks of Winnie the Pooh and its sequel, The House at Pooh Corner. Those books are surprisingly hilarious. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and be prepared for the worst.